Hello, my name is Jonathan. Welcome to the Haystack. So I did a little panel asking whether I should cover this or not, since um, a lot of other Latter-day Saint content creators have gone over the Epstein files and talked about it. There have been some other things coming out, uh, like Epstein specifically talking about a BYU Idaho student bring a pint of blood a week. Obviously, we don't have all the answers to that. Jasmine Rapley covers that really well. But the point I want to go over mainly is seeing uh, just what we, a lot of people were hoping that this uh, Epstein document drop would show us that President Trump is completely, implicated in it. And the thing is that what people don't understand is pa- part of the whole reason Epstein even got arrested was because Donald Trump was a FBI informant and helped all throughout this. He helped throughout this process. Um, he blocked Epstein from Mar-a-Lago when one of his um, people who attend his club there had stated that Epstein was being inappropriate with one or two of the girls, and so he just said, "Pack up their stuff, get get his stuff out of there, make sure everything's nice and neat, so he can't blame us for being filthy or dirty or messed up." But he's blocked. Put his picture up. He's not allowed here. Um, what we did see come out from these Epstein files. Hey, thanks for joining. Is we saw a lot of stuff about Bill Gates come out. And remember, Bill Gates is one of the largest Democrat donors. We also saw a lot of Democrat uh, people in Congress who were like receiving text messages live on C-SPAN, uh, receiving text messages from Epstein, and they were coordinating to target Trump and try to implicate him or get him in trouble. The thing is that Epstein repeatedly says that he could not get Trump. He hated him because he couldn't get him. Trump never got one of the massages, right? Um, but I think it's very telling when you have Epstein coordinating with our Democrat leaders to take down Trump all ahead of this. I think that is exceptionally telling of what is going on. It's telling of our political environment. It's telling of the motivations. Just in Maryland or Maine, something with an M. I think it was Maryland. Um, Democrat lawmakers were putting forth a bill. One Democrat lawmaker was putting forth a bill that would criminalize making AI child corn. I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say on this platform, but it would criminalize making AI child stuff. And the rest of the Democrat representatives there voted it down. They voted it down. There, and I've worked in law enforcement. I've worked as a state patrolman, as a state trooper. I've worked as a felony parole agent. I've been trained with working with sexual offenders, um, and I've had training from two different sources. One, excellent, wonderful. The next was an East Coast academic, an East Coast academic. And what he did was he was trying to portray that the idea of pedophilia was simply just a phase of being illegal, that eventually it would be made legal. That that pissed me off. That pissed me off to see that that was being taught to us, whereas our previous training from Interpol was telling us about how this deviant mind works. And so we got kind of conflicting trainings on this, and I was just it made me livid. And it was at that time that they started also taking away different programs through religious organizations and making it strictly through the state. And I'm like, oh, this is going downhill fast. Anyways, what we do see, and you know what? I'll share this. I'll share this. So I was the regional director for Idaho Young Republicans. I was a state youth committee person for my county out in Idaho. I no longer live out in Idaho. And during that time, we had a national delegate who, uh, for lack of a better word, was a rhino. And what he did was he moved out of state, was living in a different home in the on the East Coast, and he was trying to keep his position as a national delegate for Idaho. And there's some dispute about that going on. I contacted him directly. Now, this guy is a well-to-do person, really reputable person. I'm surprised he even took my call. But he took my call, told me the situation, what was going on, and I said, "You have to step out of your position because it's dishonest." Now, this guy is also LDS, also a rhino, but this guy loves authority and position. He loves rubbing shoulders with important people. And at that time, he was rubbing shoulders with the Biden administration. And he was given a directive or encouragement to write a dissertation on why Latter day Saints specifically, who voted for Trump or considered MAGA, warrant or are uh, was a national threat to democracy. It was a national threat to democracy, and that it warranted federal interference. In other words, that they wanted to paint any Latter Day Saint because of our belief in the Book of Mormon and what that says about our what will happen in our day and secret combinations. Um, that it warrants that we should be that we are a threat to democracy and that we should be classified basically as felons, have our rights taken away, unable to vote, unable to have a gun. And when he told me that, like nobody else knew about that, he told me that he was writing a dissertation on why Latter day Saints should be targeted, specifically ones who are supporting Trump in any form. And I said, dude, do you know what you're doing? You're being used. He had no idea. He's like, well, but I really like my position. I really like being with these people. I really like feeling important. I said, that doesn't matter. What you're doing, it could destroy so much. This is bad. This is treason. It's treason against one, your nation, and two, it's treason against your own faith. You're breaking your own covenants. You have to step down from your position because one, it's a lie, and two, what you're doing is there's no good that can come from it. You're just being used. And when this inevitably gets exposed, you'll be the fall guy. Uh, Needless to say, he stepped away from his position. Um, I'm not sure if he ever finished that dissertation, um, but I imagine it would have been devastating to the religious and political climate if it ever did come out. Am I a prepper? Um, we always have 72-hour kits. Where I've gone through wildland fires. So I've been displaced by wildland fire, and so we're always prepared for any given thing. So I came from California, and we've lost power, water, and we've had to rely on emergency supplies. So uh, pre- common sense preparation, yes. So have an extra change of clothes, medications if needed, like headache medicine, um, toilet paper. So when things go wrong, it's not so devastating. Um, so there's practical use. You always have additional food and you rotate it throughout your pantry. If something's getting old, eat it. Don't let it expire. save money on groceries. So when you go out shopping, buy in bulk and you put a little bit aside, you know, just like Joseph in Egypt. They had 7 years of plenty. Put a little bit aside, put a little bit aside, use it in times of need. I think that's a good principle to have. Practical prepper, yeah. And I think everybody should be a practical prepper. Um, so that's my takeaway. Is there's a lot of people who wanted things to expose Donald Trump. There's a lot of progressive Latter-day Saints who are just any good he does. Yeah, but what about the Epstein files? 3 million files were released. Yeah, well, that's not the entire thing. Can you go through 3 million files and redact everything like super easily? And not everything is redacted, perfectly. They had a lot of people working on it. And so this is a first batch. One idea is that it's probably flooding the system with information. We're getting so saturated with stuff, it's going to keep people occupied, right? I think it's just a practical thing. You could that's as many as you could get out in that amount of time. Um, there is a lot of people talking about the Israel connection with Epstein. And originally I was going to have images pulled up here, but I don't know what will be taken down. And some of the stuff is graphic, and I know that sometimes there's youth that watches this, so I'm not going to go over the graphic nature of things. Um, if you want to see the Israel Mossad discussion on that, I would encourage you to look at Watcher Palmer. He just did a video on the Epstein files concerning Israel and Mossad. He takes a different approach than someone like Candace Owens, for instance. To me, I think Candace Owens is a nut job. Um, I do think, yes, of course, there are some Jews that are implicated in there, obviously. And when it comes to the type of crimes being listed in the Epstein files, there are no sides to that. Everyone goes down. I don't care if they're left, right, center, whoever they are, they're down. They just happen to be a lot of left, a lot, most, all. You know, a lot of people were pulling up these yellow highlighted files um, in brackets, and it said, "Look, it's Trump, it's Trump, it's Trump," and look, they deleted off the website. It was not deleted off the website; it was there. In fact, Xander, there's uh, a Book of Mormon content creator guy, very progressive. I think he blocked me. I think he blocked me because I don't jump on the bandwagon of everything is Trump's fault. Um, so sorry, I'm trying to read some of your stuff, and sometimes we get this is unvetted right here. So sometimes we get some weirdo stuff in there. Um, but in those files that were talking about Trump and said Trump did this, Trump did this, these are all accusations and complaints that anybody can make. Is open season. Obviously, we know that Epstein had nothing on Trump, and he was coordinating with Democrat leaders, both in Congress and just uh, as financiers, to try and smear Trump, and it didn't work. Um, so flooding it with complaints to be held in the files makes a lot of sense. They tried everything. The thing is a lot of people covered up the category that says the investigative response, and the response shows that they had gone in and verified each of these who these people were and found that it was not credible. Some of these people were schizophrenic. Some of these people they couldn't verify. They gave false information. Um, let me read some of these. Terry Austin says, "You love Donald Trump." Run It says, "The things that are. He just tends to do a bunch." Yep, just gloss over it as strange. Game Genie says, "I'm so tired of bad people." Me too. I feel like we have asymmetrical morality going on, where you have people who are abiding by the law, and then you have leftists who are just doing their own. They're doing their own thing. Uh, don't ignore your viewers. Well, the thing is, a lot of what you're saying, I couldn't really follow. Half Hawkins, half man. Um, my exercise routine includes running away from problems, running late, and running my mouth nonstop. Yeah, you're not alone. Here's the thing: is how things get this bad is when you have uh, good gospel believing, Judeo-Christian value, good people who do nothing. I saw a text message exchange today. I own a minivan because I have a family. Um, I saw a text message exchange between two people, and this was saying one person was constantly worried because all of the exhausting things going on in the world, all the bad things going on in the world, and he's just weighing on his shoulders. And then the other person says, I tend to not look at that because I can't feel the spirit in it, so I just ignore it. And then the other person says, well, that's probably why it's as bad as it is then, is because good people do nothing. And I I relate to that sentiment that good people do nothing. Now, I am not the best at everything, but I put myself out there when I worked in the GOP. I did that for what, like 5 years as the state youth committee person and a regional director for Idaho Young Republicans. Um, State trooper. I was a felony parole agent. I even sheriff because there was a lot of corruption in our town. Our sheriff lied under oath. He's Brady'd, so he can't testify, can't do anything. And the person under him, literally every murder in that town is close to him, and they're all unsolved. So I don't trust. I don't trust those people. And they did shady things. I knew a lot of things that they did that were off record. Um, so I ran for sheriff. I didn't. I didn't win because I wasn't related to half the town like the other guy was. All right, let's see. Uh, I see you. I don't know what that means. Yeah, that is from Anne Frank. You are a brown shirt. All right. Uh, when you say they are okay, here we go. Under duress. When you say they quote feel the spirit close quote, most of them, most of the time, they're following the pleasant emotions at Jeremiah 17:9. I would think that people feeling the spirit. Yeah, I don't argue with you. You know what? Let's pull that up just in case. I don't want to say I don't have that memorized. So pull up Jeremiah. Jeremiah 17:8. We'll go ahead and read that. Jeremiah 17. I'm using the Gospel Library app, verse 9. And it says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Yeah, I think people do genuinely feel the spirit, but what I would apply this to is when you have some young buck at BYU who goes up to a girl on his first day and says, uh, "The Lord told me I have to marry you." I think that's bull crap. That's a red flag. Don't do that. That's where it's deceitful. It's because people get what is called a emotional revelation or even a hormonal revelation, and I don't agree with that. I think when people are seeking out to do good, um, the Lord intervenes with the least amount necessary to allow you free will. and allow his will to still be achieved. Let's see, Game Genie. What if Bill Clinton testify? So they were going to be held in contempt, but it turns out that they just came out saying that they will testify. So that'll be interesting. We've seen Clinton lie under oath. We've seen Hillary, Bill and Hillary lie before. So it should be interesting. We're used to their lies. We've seen their lies a lot. Um, Clinton denied the stuff with Monica Lewinsky. Turns out she did stuff with him. We know that Hillary lied about in the Russian hoax. They willfully and knowingly weaponized the FBI and were funded by the DNC to investigate and target their political opponent, Donald Trump. Um, yeah, and it was all manufactured. It was all false. It was all proven false. Just like right now, you'd have Senator was it Halsey? Um, they're going through investigations showing that Republicans who support Trump were being illegally spied on by their Democrat counterparts. And this is being discussed in Congress right now. It's being investigated. That is the equivalent of Watergate. It's worse than Watergate at this point, after all this targeting and assassination attempts and assassination of Charlie Kirk due to the leftist rhetoric, the violent rhetoric from our leftist delusional people. Let's see, the deception of the heart. Capture Dandy says, "Get off the internet, you old geezer." Um, Under Duress, King James Version, Power Cannon P. Do you think that we should cut off the H-1B visas and the L visa? I think you have to, what's the word for it? I guess you could say prioritize. I would prioritize known criminals first. I know that they're doing a no, and I don't know the definitions of each of those visas, so I don't want to speak out of turn there. But if someone is under their visa and they're abiding by the limitations of their visa, don't touch them. If they're doing things legally, don't touch them. People who have knowingly violated have criminal record and history in the United States. Yeah, yeah, you get those people first. You get the worst of the worst first, and then work your way down. I think the Trump administration did something wise, offering money. Hey, here's 1,000, was it $1,800, something like that, to get up and go. And then I think they bumped it up to 2,500. Hey, we'll pay you to deport yourself. And I guess 2 million people self-deported. So that is the most peaceful, logical way. And then you have places like in Mexico that don't have as stringent requirements to get into a university. And so it opens up a lot of opportunities for people who do have families and homes down there. Um, and there's not so much competition. However, if they're coming from an area that has DEI, then they probably are relying on their DEI. You must have misunderstood what I was saying. So, the heart is more deceitful than anything else. They literally deceive us by recruiting our emotions. Yes, and if you've seen what I've put up before, there's a CIA document. It's in all my previous videos where I've talked about this, where it was out of the 1950s, and it's psychological warfare. It's guerrilla warfare of the mind, and what you do is you set a pretext and paint an image on an ideology, on a group, on a person. In this case, it's MAGA. And you put pressure on it over the years. And you have little cells everywhere. You have paid protesters, paid agitators that go in and routinely put on shows of protests. And then you have your agitators within those protests to up the ante, to test the boundaries. mainly to get useful idiots to do something stupid because the whole idea is they're trying to get somebody to die. The whole point is to make cheap martyrs. And if you want to see that, I've posted it 1,000 times. Let me see if I could. I maybe I can pull it up on the computer, and I'll just ask you to be patient. I pull up the link, and I will try and put it in the feed if I can. But this is a CIA document, and it patterns off of what we see in um, manifesto from the communists from the 1950s, how they are to use marginalized people to try and get their way, make them feel like victims. They live off of victimhood. So they bank on victimhood. They use that and then radicalize the people and get them to do stupid things. All right, I'm going to drop the link here. Um, let's see. I can't even see my own chat. Oh, here we go. There we go. So there's a link right there that's directly to the CIA. This was released. It had a few different release times and different approvals. This will show you the plan. It even details the use of the word Gestapo. It says to use Gestapo on the police. The whole point of doing this is to turn over a regime. And if you look at the pattern of protests, you will see that it's always during Trump, and it's always the left is always destroying things, but somehow it's the right's fault for existing. This guy could cure cancer, and these people would hate him for it. Um, you're robbing people of the trial of going through a cancer. They'd make something up because the whole idea is to try and make them victim, um, bank off of victimhood. This is new. The what's it called? The haves and the have-nots. This is the new version of that. Now everybody has everything. Now it's a matter of rights. Now everybody has rights, so they have to change it to race. But that's already been played out. They still try to, and so they try to go to delusion, uh, LGBTQ, trans crap, um, all of that. And so there is also another CIA document. I don't have it on hand right now, but what it does is it tells you how to sabotage a place from within. This was used by the early version of our CIA. I forget what that's called. It was used in Nazi Germany. And basically, what you're supposed to do is make things more bureaucratic, make things longer, harder to do. Basically, the whole record sounds like somebody who's just analyzing his workmate and he's just pissed off. He's like, this guy, everything this guy does pisses me off. And he just wrote all that stuff down. That's what it sounds like. But he says, make things confusing. Things that are already settled, go ahead and make it a problem again. Man is a man and a woman is a woman. Let's confuse that for some reason. And that's exactly what we see happening on the left. The left has been an enemy since before the Civil War. Um, for example, Joseph Smith Jr., the prophet of the restoration for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, aka the Mormons. He ran for president on the platform that he would abolish slavery. Oh, can you read my comments? That's for you, bud. Fill out an application. Let me scroll up to what you're talking about. Uh, I don't read Korean, whatever that is. It shows up differently on my phone than it shows up here. Yeah, read your comments. I don't know what substance I'm supposed to get out of this, so you have to repeat it. If there's any swear words, there's things that are automatically blocked that I don't see, so just don't swear in it. Um, Anyways, going back to Joseph Smith Jr., he ran on the platform of abolishing slavery. He was murdered. He was the first presidential candidate to ever be assassinated. And it was through mobocracy, just like these protests, things like that. Um, it's the website for applying to work at McDonald's. Now, Trump already worked at McDonald's. Thanks, though. Um, there we go. Boom, sucker. All right. So he was killed by people who wanted slavery. Um, it was a lot of political uprest with that. And from there grew the Civil War, where Abraham Lincoln eventually freed the slaves. The way Joseph Smith was going to do it, and he just got honored at a black college just this week. Um, but the way Joseph Smith was going to do it, he was going to use the federal government to purchase all the slaves and then free them and settle all the debts between everybody and say it's cleaned out, it's done, and have all that be done. So that's the way he was going to do it. He just got honored for that. The more Democrat group uh, killed him. In fact, I now live in Missouri. It was said that the Saints would not come back to Missouri until destruction cometh, and that not even a yellow dog could wag its tail. It's important to understand back then, Democrats were known as yellow dog Democrats, and we are seeing the state turn red. Um, Heck, I think even the former Attorney General, Elder Morgan of the 70, held a position here in Missouri. So we are seeing Latter-day Saints come back to the state. It is turning red. That threat that once was there is now gone. Um, then you have the Confederate group. They're basically the Democrats. They're the ones who started the KKK, and they have been at war with this nation ever since the Civil War through small and simple means. They're the ones that were marginalized and easy to be recruited through communist propaganda. Socialist and communist propaganda has snuck up through the left and through the Democrats ever since the 50s and has compromised the integrity of our national security. And I think that's ultimately where things are going right now, is we're seeing the fulfillment of that. And when you have somebody like Trump who's not playing by the rules of the old-fashioned right and left like Bush did, um, where you get to give a little push and tug, and everyone gets to be warmongers and go to war and make money, and everybody's happy. They're just gonna do politics. It's not like that anymore. You have a maverick, Trump, who they tried everything to get rid of him, and it didn't work. Um, and so they're now feeling like they're losing all sense of uh, hold that they have within the government, and they're throwing everything they can at it. They're thinking, hopefully, this Jeffrey Epstein stuff would expose it. I think that's why he didn't give so much attention towards the Epstein files, is to make the Democrats want to see it even more, to let them speculate, just to see that he was an FBI informant and it was pivotal in the ultimate arrest of Jeffrey Epstein in the first place. So that kind of backfired. But no, Orange Man's still bad according to these guys. At all costs, he has to be the bad guy. Um, No, I think the left right now, based on the CIA document that we have here and the pattern, they are absolutely treasonous to this nation. Everything that they're doing is destructive and does not serve the American public, only serves outside sources. And uh, the whole reason we're seeing these riots and everything is because the fraud has been uncovered from their schemes through those programs. It's no mistake that we saw the Democrat representative in Minnesota assassinated by a Walls employee, and that Walls employee said Walls made him do it. Go play out there. Daddy. Yep. So I'm in the schoolroom today. We homeschool, so I'm in here today. All right. We don't tolerate racism. So see you later, dude. Probably a leftist. Because it always is. It always is. Um, so there we are. I don't remember where I was at. But hopefully, this is helpful to you from a Latter day Saint perspective. I don't speak on behalf of the church. I just happen to be a Latter day Saint. I am a conservative Latter day Saint that has worked in the GOP. Uh, I've worked in government, I've worked in politics, and uh, I've seen a lot of bad stuff happen. In fact, I'll tell you this: in Idaho, we had uh, just show you how compromised the GOP in Idaho was. We had outside funding coming from Arizona, California, from Democrats to go to a super PAC by a rhino who used that money to go to every single county in Idaho and every single precinct within each of those counties to go and purchase his very own candidates for precinct committeemen. Because what you do is if you get people to represent the precinct that reflect that vote your way, then you get to change policies, which within each county. And if you get change policies in the county, you get to change policies within the state and ultimately turn it blue. Um, yeah, it's so easy to see through, yet so many are blinded. Yeah, they're very short-sighted. Um, and so this guy goes in, and a lot of these people he's having run for Republican precinct committee person for the GOP, they're Democrats, Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ activists. So, and it couldn't be more clear. The guy is in opposition to everything conservative or anything common sense. Anytime he opens his mouth, um, I called him out on a few things. We had a discussion. He got his hooks into different people in every county, and we had smear pieces written on us. This guy is just no good. But we put out our own paper because the newspaper wouldn't publish what we wanted to tell them. So we had to purchase our own paper and distribute it to the entire county, exposing that these people were bought and paid for by Democrats and people posing Republicans, Democrat posing as Republicans. Um, and still, people just, they didn't care. Cal Bradley, uh, yeah, no, that's not how it all works at all. You can get elected to as many local offices as you want. It doesn't change the vote total of the district. Write as many smear pieces as you want, buy as many candidates as you want, doesn't change how the county votes. No, it's not changing how the county votes, but it's changing the political party. That's the point. Is you change the bylaws and stances in the political party. You submit rules and resolutions to uh, your politicians in Boise or whatever your capital is. So if you're buying only activists, like leftist activists, that's what they're going to push. And that's going to be the only narrative because there won't be anything conservative to talk about. Conservatives won't be involved there. Um, so, for instance, I tried to step down from my position because I had had enough. I'm like, you know what? I've had enough. We've exposed everything, and people are just wanting to be naive. The girl who took up my position, she was out of, what was it, Washington or Oregon? I think she was out of Oregon. Super leftist. But again, you put yourself in as a Republican in a red state so you could just vote the leftist in because they're all posing as Republicans. Um, that's why you actually have Democrats putting money towards Republicans in other states. She couldn't stand that there were conservatives, and she said that she couldn't get her voice heard because she wanted to do some like activist crap. Um, I don't know all the details because I wasn't in those meetings, but she commented on the things that she disliked, and I remember saying, "Well, that's just the way it works. It's a demo like we vote on things, and whatever is voted on is what passes. So you may not like that we're voting to remove LGBTQ flags from state capitals, but if the majority of us have voted for that, that's the will of the representatives. That's the will of the people being represented here." Um, so she stepped down, and I was brought back into that temporarily until I moved. But it shows you that people are being bought and purchased, and even in a red state like Idaho, a lot of people just didn't care. They were just never Trumpers, right? That like, well, it's just bad, right? It's just bad. I don't like the things that are happening. I don't like how ICE is handling things, um, because our leftist politicians have instructed law enforcement in the jails and the prisons not to hand over their criminal aliens to ICE for them to come and pick up and deport. Common sense, right? It's what most of the states do. But no, they insist on not cooperating with federal law, therefore forcing the people out into the public to do their job. They know that. That's purposeful. The whole purpose of that is so that they can intercept it with paid protesters and agitators to go and interfere and obstruct law enforcement so that they can have a confrontation and hopefully get one of their own people to die because they need martyrs to make it work. It's all listed in that CI document I've included in here. So again, look in the chat. That CIA document is there. It's in my previous videos talking on the subject. Um, we see that Epstein was working with people on gender corrective um, formulas and things like that, working with doctors to do that, to make men less masculine, to keep that boyish or feminine figure longer, to make it more appealing to perverts and pedophiles. Um, Gosh, and I hate this stuff. The first case I ever worked in Idaho State Police was a child torture case, and just found it on Rolling Domestic in Coeur d'Alene, and I saw one child beaten beyond anything. His back was mangled. It was horrendous. The kid was under a lot of drugs. It made me angry. We barely saved that kid's life. So him and his brother ended up safe, getting away from the parents. So um, anybody that harms kids like that, you can't say what you want to do. No, nah, I can't say it. But they definitely need to be stopped at all costs. That's for certain. Um, Epstein files show him working with gates to practice and prepare for uh, pandemic. Practice a pandemic. Ben Swan covered this early on. Ben Swan also covered Pizzagate 10 years before all of this. Ben Swan was taken off his network. He was fired. He was asked to remove his stuff, and then he got fired. And he still kept reporting on these things on his own. And now, 10 years later, validated on everything about the coronavirus, validated on everything about Pizzagate. Um, so tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I want people to stop being so stupid. Yeah. OB Wise, what more can I say? Music Record says, hey, hey. So, um, this is a religious channel where we talk about religion, history, things like that, current events. Um, and the thing is a lot of people don't want to bring up this kind of stuff. They don't want to talk about politics because it makes them not feel the spirit. Oh my gosh, is not the scriptures full of kings and wars and secret actions happening? And it's stopping talking about religion and politics at the dinner table that causes these issues where good people do nothing. They're ignorant and they're blissful in their ignorance. We need to stop doing that because knowledge destroys all of this stuff. Hey, I'll try too much to ask for. Oh my gosh, my old church got into politics and that killed the vibe for me. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think you talk about politicians and stuff like that, but you don't ignore current events and limit it to scripture, right? I think you can say, hey, there's a pattern. Super progressive dude in my religion who was using scriptures like way wonky to justify his position. And so I could see what you mean there. But I still think that people who are religious, have beliefs should not ignore the things in their own communities. They need to be earnestly engaged in a good cause of their own free will and choice. Now, they stressed that Trump was so great and Biden was so bad, and I just distanced myself for spiritual reasons. Yeah, that's not. Trump has good policies, and Biden was not making decisions. So I could see how that doesn't make sense. Biden was not all there, and Trump. What we really want is someone looking out for our nation first, and Trump is the first person to be doing that in a long time. And it's honestly what we need economically, for security. They're all evil. Yeah. Well, not nobody walks on water except nobody's perfect except for Jesus. What everybody needs is Jesus. Now, what Trump recently said, there's a prayer conference, something like that, where he said we need a nation of religion. We need religion in our nation, and absolutely yes, I believe that. I believe people should worship as they see fit, as long as it's not causing harm to people. Um, but they as long as it's not causing harm. Like if they're doing child sacrifice, no, you don't allow that. Um, but allow people to worship as they see fit, and I would encourage and help preserve the freedom for other people, even not of my religion, to worship. If there is, let's say, a Lutheran and a Catholic and um, a Jew, you know, and someone is coming after any one of their religions, I would speak up on of their defense as if it were my own religion. I would not let that be taken away by the state or by individuals who are just jerk offs. Let's see. Come on, bro, use your brain. They're implementing facial recognition for all citizens. Jeremiah 17:9 again. Most deceptive thing above all is the heart. People become emotionally invested into lies. Politics, religion are among those lies. That's why people get emotional about it. You get emotional about the things you love. And I think what the adversary does is he distorts the good thing. He tries to put things in the image of God and distorts it. It's a counterfeit. Everything that Satan does is a counterfeit of good. And that's why it's so easy for these leftists to believe that they're on some moral agenda. But, abortion is not a moral agenda. That's immoral. Not knowing how to define a woman, that's confusing, right? Confusion is the work of the devil. Things that are very plain, and y- and trying to confuse that. Palantir and Peter, Theolone, JD Vance. Let's see. To draw the line on child sacrifice. Haha, just messing with you. Oh yeah. Well, thanks. I'm actually surprised anybody engaged in this. I am talking about controversial things from my Latter Day Saint audience that typically gets a lot of people to unsubscribe and blacklist me, which I could care less because I think these things need to be discussed, and I think having a wide variety of viewpoints and people with different backgrounds is helpful. I like hearing the opposition. I like hearing people who are adjacent. Um, like getting the whole spectrum and understanding that. I honestly want to understand why people are so invested in other points. But when it comes to leftists, it's you kind of got to go, okay, you're playing by different rules. You're playing by imagination, and it gets lost. So, do you guys have any questions? If you want to do a quick Q&A, you can go for it. As far as I'm concerned, the Epstein files, we still need 3 million more to come out. There were a lot of people who were saying that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is messing around with pedophilia and child sacrifice and crap like that. And I saw this one guy, he's a real estate agent, I think, or he does real estate, lives in Utah, and he shows ambiguous partial pictures and goes, "Oh, look, this is from a Mormon church leader's house," and then he tells the story of leaving the church and how much he lied to his bishop and how much he never lived it in the first place. And the Epstein files did not reveal anything that he was saying, and you would think it would. Uh, so there's some things like that that are going on. We do know that there's wackos that do crazy things. It's no mistake that President Nelson, before he passed, he was 101 years old when he passed, but in one of his last talks he gave, he talked about abuse of women and children and reaffirmed the the horrific nature of what is in store for those who do such things. And that it would be better for you to have a millstone hanged about your neck and dropped into the ocean. Is that what it, or did I always imagine that? Or sunk to the bottom of the ocean. Um, yeah. So loving your enemy, forgiving your enemy, that can be really hard for people who are doing horrific, awful things. At the same time, it then puts it in the Lord's hands. Saying, okay, justice will be in my hands, and these people that harm the children and women, they're these children and and women, their voices come up from the dust as a testimony against these people, and there is no light where they're going. It would be better for them to suffer at our if you call yourself Christian and call yourself a liberal, you're not Christian. If you're a classical liberal, which is now today a libertarian, um, but yeah, a liberal today it's just leftist. It's not what liberal used to mean. Um, these people are delusional. I'm glad you popped up on my feed. I'm in a super liberal Ivy League school ward and have felt pretty alone in my views. Yeah, I have seen a lot of Latter-day Saints go super liberal, super progressive, and it blinds them from a lot, like so much things that you would think are common sense, and all of a sudden you're like, that's a baptismal question, right? Like, how are you supportive of abortion? Like John Golf. Yep, says my parents are Mormon and went leftist. Oh my gosh. All the people I grew up with, even in my young single adult crew, um, before I left on my mission, I went on my mission, came back, everyone went leftist and left the church. Funny how those two typically go together. Either you go leftist and leave the church, or you go leftist and become an academic and speak for the church, right? You make yourself a, a priest according to your own Ivy League education. And so if you can't leave it, then you're going to try and change it. And we're seeing a lot of leftists try to have emotional and political revelation to change the church. And that's not how it works. And the brethren won't give in to that. That's sad. Um, it's sad to see that what was a common sense conservative is now considered extreme radical right. Like I believe in the nuclear family. Oh, he's a extremist. Even when we got our training from the FBI when I was in the state police, they're like white nationalist conservatives, constitutionalists are the greatest threat to America. And I'm like, I don't see them burning down places and rioting. I mean, I see other things. So I'm a Fed. No, I'm not. I've done some work with them, and but right now it's just me. As you can tell, I get to say whatever the freak I want, and there are no repercussions. I don't have to answer to anybody. I don't have to. If I was in law enforcement still, or any of these things, I would not have a job tomorrow. Well, I don't know. I've only worked under liberals, so if you have an opinion, you're fired. Um, so you're fed? Question no. I was a liberal in 2016. None of my views have changed, and now I'm somewhat far right. Funny how that works. When I was 18, I worked for the California Conservation Corps. I was the Green Party. I was a um, I led hiking tours, and I adopted a freaking panda. Uh, and look at me now. I'm trying to find a needle in a haystack. Yeah, find that needle that pricks your heart. You know, little that little useful information. I'm a lot of fluff. I'm a lot of nonsense. So that one thing that helps you, use that. I really care to stress test that. Stress test if I'm a Fed. I'm not, and I am too old and too fat now to go through any more academies. I am sick of going through academies. I'm sick of pepper spray. I'm sick of classes of things you already have gone through. Uh, uh, Crystal meth or fentanyl? Neither. Let's get rid of all of it. Um, he isn't liberal. No, I actually got to meet the governor in California. When I was in high school, I wrote a paper on modern political thought, and it won some kind of scholarship or award to go up to Sacramento and meet the governor. So you go stay at a hostel, fly up there, stay at a hostel, and got to go meet the governor. Never forget how short he was, and his lips on his shoes are like that big. But he told us his old workout routine to maintain his physique. Great guy. That was he was good for California. It's sad to see what happened to California after he left. Um, what work were you doing helping to save children? How do you get into it? Or how did I get into it? So this, it was I was in the state police, so trooper. It was before going through the academy. I was doing a pre-academy thing. Okay, go get your jammies. And I was going for a ride along. I was actually with, I think I was with a sergeant, and we just heard that somebody got stopped first thing in the morning. It was a rolling domestic. There was a woman that was badly beaten, and there's two kids inside. The guy was a felon. He had a gun, and there was drugs. So we separated them, and we saw how badly beaten the woman was. Um, there's presence of drugs. We found out the guy was from out of state, so he violated his parole. He's a felon, shouldn't have a gun. He's out of state, and he has drugs. And he was crossing state lines and coming from Oregon and coming through Coeur d'Alene area up near Wallace, and that's where we got intercepted him. And it turns out he was on his way from like South Dakota or North Dakota to go pick up his woman and to go pick up his kid. And apparently, this kid was being kept in a cage and being beaten and tortured and drugged and used. And so this guy went to go kill the boyfriend at that time because they were separated. But the boyfriend ended up getting arrested, so he couldn't kill him. So the guy just picked up a bunch of drugs and was heading back with his family. And that's where we intercepted him. And he wanted to be locked up with the guy. He's like, yeah, put me back over there. But it was in a different state. Like he wanted to go in and kill the guy. We took him to we took the kids to the hospital, um, got in an ambulance, drove it at code to the what's that the kids hospital out there. Um, just barely just barely got him in time. That kid would have died. His spine was mangled. It, I remember the mom. We were at the hospital, and the mom was not wanting to let him go, and I'm like, we have to get him to the emergency room. I held her youngest, she another little boy, um, and I stopped her before she was gonna breastfeed. I just had this thought, and I asked the hospital, I'm like, "Hey, do you guys have some milk?" Something like that, warmed it up, and I said, "Hey, let's give him the he's old enough to have milk, right?" I think he must have been 2 at the time, and so I held the little boy and fed him, and the sergeant, like, I'm brand new, it was my first day. I'm not even a full trooper or anything yet. I'm just there in training. And so he's like, "Why did you go and do that?" And I'm like, "She's probably got drugs in her system. You don't want him drinking milk from her if he's got drugs in the system." And so we got to detox him, get him checked out, get it, and uh, and then I saw her deleting stuff off her phone like crazy. So I mentioned like it looks like she's also deleting stuff, so you might want to. I don't know what to do here. But it ended up being a good thing because she did have a lot of drugs in her system, and she was acting irregular. Um, the good thing is that those kids were saved, and they're in a safe place now. They were all Native American, um, all 4 of them Native, um, and so they're gonna go to a reservation, which if that kid got that kid was gonna die. That kid was they that they were gonna dump his body ultimately, and so it was very good that we got into that. Um, Again, that was just from a traffic stop. That was all found from a traffic stop, and it saved the life of at least one kid and got a better life for those 2 other kids. And then we got some criminals off the street. Um, I wish there were ways, if I knew other ways to help people now. I don't. Um, I think I need to give my family more attention. I remember after coming back from the hospital that day, I was staying at a hostel, was it Washington or Oregon? But I had to cross state lines and I was staying there for a month. And I remember calling my wife, and my wife is pregnant. She's got 2 kids by herself. No, 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 not pregnant. She just had a baby, and we have our other 2-year-old at that time, and she's stressed beyond her limit. Um, and she's crying and tell me just how difficult the day was. And I didn't get a word in yet. And I'm like, hey, just don't be mad. It gives you some perspective. Um, I know one of the other troopers, he said he went home to his wife, and his wife vented to him about first world problems. This guy was a little bit more involved, and he said he didn't get a chance to mention it to his wife. His wife, I think, found watching the news and saw him on the news, and he broke down crying, talking about what happened. Um, he was given the debrief to the public, and that's how she learned it. And she's like, "Why didn't you say anything?" And he's like, "You never gave me a chance." They're dealing with everybody's worst day of their life. You gotta. There is so much psychological training that they go through that we all went through, and physical training. We're tested beyond our limits, and so there's emotional caps. It's not a career you stay on forever if you're seeing this stuff every day. Um, i it's hard. So that's what these people don't understand about ICE doing their job. Something I wish they did understand, but I think these people are beyond feeling, and they could care less. They just got evil and hate and delusion running through their minds. El Paculi, I always love hearing from you. Crimes against children would have been a hard detail to serve in. Rewarding when things are in favor for children, but so disheartening when things go south. Yeah. I remember when I became a agent, that guy a lot. It affected him in a lot of different ways. That and put cells on, and they put on somebody who used to work at the jails. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank goodness, because that guy looked like he was going to lose it, and he's having a baby, and you don't want him to, yeah. So he was bitter against me for some time, but then I think he realized that he needed that and got some good counseling. So also, when you go through something like that, we had to attend mandatory counseling. Same thing if officer ever fires their weapon. First thing they do is they trade out that weapon, goes into evidence, it's investigated thoroughly, you're put on administrative leave while it's investigated, and you go through counseling. And it tears you up, especially because no officer wants to go and take a life. They're prepared to, they're trained to be hard to kill, they're trained to survive, but in the end, um, if they're firing their weapon, it could go any manner of direction. They could lose their job, they could lose their life, and sometimes losing their life is more preferable to losing a job. And that's an unfortunate reality in some cases. Um, so this type of psychological guerrilla warfare that the left engages in. Um, Discouragement, wanting people to be depressed. They want these guys to off themselves, and they know, when an officer is in a situation like that and they're being attacked, they're living in a glass house. They're going to be going through depression. They're going to have a lot of social pressures. They're going to have their family saying, "I can't deal with this anymore. I got people calling us up. There's people at our house." There were people at my house when I came home at 3 in the morning once. Luckily, I had built a good rapport with those people, but they happened to be the very people on the block that hated cops. So this guy hated the sheriff and the deputies, and they were beyond corrupt. So I don't blame them. That's why I ran, tried to run for sheriff. But they uh, uh, something bad had happened with the dad, and they wanted help, but they didn't know who to ask because they didn't trust the local police, and the guy wanted to kill the local police. But I had built up a rapport, so I had some trust with these guys. But imagine if they were people who hated me. Imagine if I was a crappy cop. They knew where I lived. They were at my house, and they were there waiting on my lawn when I pulled up at 3 in the morning. So now imagine ICE. Well, no wonder they wear masks. They need to keep their family safe. And if you threaten their family, cards are off the table. It's the badge is off at that point, and you don't want that to happen. Uh, I feel like you are. Sorry. Every now and again, we get some perverts in the comments. You just have to take them out. I wish it was that easy to take them out in real life, legally. Anyways, that'll be it for now. I'm surprised anybody actually. This is stuff that we do need to talk about. Um, we don't always understand what everybody's going through. And for people who feel that they're being unjustly treated, um, Epstein files are trying to target the commander in chief. We can see that the Democrats were working with Epstein to target our commander in chief, and that's treason. That it's criminal. It's treason. These people should be held to the highest levels of the law and be prosecuted because they're literally trying to attack their political opponents through lies, smears, and that's why Trump has been suing the BBC and CNN, and why he's winning so many of these lawsuits is because they lied. You don't win a lawsuit unless the people lie. Um, and so we're seeing hoaxes, but it's not enough. People are ignoring the evidence of their eyes. People love a lie. I think that's in Second Timothy, in the last days, when people make and love a lie. Well, light disrupts darkness, and the more truth and knowledge you have will help. So that's why we homeschool. um, if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, um, or don't. I don't care. I just We just need to talk about this and come together. All right.